Okay, hi there, welcome to the Guitar Show. This is a coffee chat. This is a little coffee chat with a little bit of a difference. Let me take a swig of my coffee. Today we're going to be just talking about Stratocasters and kind of my ever sort of search for the holy grail of Strats. Basically, I kind of come up with the kind of conclusion that you can't have one Strat, because really the way I saw it was I was most happiest when I had one guitar. And I had a Stratocaster, that was my guitar. And that was kind of home for me. It was a rosewood Strat, and it was a guitar that I kind of put together myself, you know. So ever since then, I've sort of been, you know, searching for this kind of one guitar, and that kind of eventually evolved into this. Along the way, I picked up this, and I think really that's kind of where I'm at. Really, is a kind of a rosewood neck Strat, which is set up for Texas kind of blues style, and a maple neck Strat, which is more kind of vintage. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So if we discuss this one first, this is basically a hodgepodge of parts. Well, it was until recently. So this body here is all from a company called Esp, who are out in Japan, and they make a very high-end guitar called a Navigator. And these Navigators go for about $3,500 or $4,000. They're expensive. So it's a two-piece body. It's obviously older, and it comes with these Seymour Duncan pickups. That's how it's left. I'm probably going to put Mojo pickups in there because Mojos are my kind of go-to pickups, and I've just run out of them, so I need to talk to Mark and see if he can make some more pickups for me. But these Seymour Duncans, they're not bad actually. They're kind of, I think they're called something like Antiquity Surf or something, but they're pretty good. I'm using raw vintage saddles, which I find to be really nice. And this is just Goto hardware, you know, it's just a Goto block. You know, raw vintage springs in there. This is pretty much stock, you know, there's nothing flashy going on here. It's actually a three-way switch, so you have to kind of find the middle, you know, selector there. This is pretty stock. This is where the guitar comes into its own though. This is a neck, this is custom made. And I think this is where, if you're going to build like a Stevie Vaughan or Texas sort of style guitar, this is where you really need to maybe think about going to a company like, American Custom Guitars or Walmart, sort of American Custom Guitars, or, you know, some manufacturer who can build you a neck. I went for a sort of a lone luthier out in the Middle East. Actually, he made this neck. And it's not perfect, and I've had to do a bit of shaping on this, and I still need to do some more shaping, I think, because it's still quite a chunky neck, if you can see that. I would recommend a vintage 42mm nut width or smaller. Personally, I go for 41.5mm. I don't know how much that is in inches, I'm a metric guy, but I'd say around 41.5 or 42 max. You don't want to have a nut width of 43, because, you know, a lot of that Stevie Vaughan's thing is the thumb over the neck, and that's why I like a little bit of wood here on the back of the neck, so that you can, you know, when you're doing these bends, I'll show you in a minute, when you do the bends, you want to have your hand covered with the wood, as much support as possible for those big bends, you know. That's what I kind of find works for me. The frets are 6100. I've been using these frets for donkey's years, and for that kind of Texas blues sound, it really is everything. It's, without these frets, you're going to really struggle, because again, with the bends, the one-fingered bends, no, it's going to be really difficult to do that one-finger bend up a tone if you don't have these high frets, you know. So that's something to think about. I've also got a really big slab of Brazilian rosewood, and that's just to accommodate these big frets, because the problem with Stevie Ray Vaughan's guitar, if you listen to a few interviews with René Martinez, he was saying that in the end they had to replace the neck because the fretboard was just too thin to hold the frets in. And we're going to talk about these frets in a minute, because I think it does have it has a big effect on the rigidness of the neck, and that affects the tone. The more metal you have in that neck, the more it's going to affect the resonance of the neck, you know. So sometimes smaller frets can be better, and we're going to talk about that with the maple neck. But so that's a kind of that's kind of where I'm at really with this guitar. I've got these sort of tuners that I've always liked. The Stevie Vaughan used to use these tuners, so they're really cool. They don't add anything to the tone, trust me, you don't need them for the tone. So really that's it, just a nice kind of chunky neck. It's got no finish on it, maybe a little bit of oil there. Nice slab of rosewood and really big frets. I'm tuned to E flat here. So you can kind of see that you can kind of get that vibrato. And that's the thing with that Texas blues style, is that Stevie Vaughan style, is really digging digging in and getting these nice wide vibrato. You're going down and up. Watch Stevie Vaughan, he does both. So a thing you might want to think about is your vibrato on your guitar anyway. I mean, I hear a lot of guys playing Stevie Vaughan style, and I don't profess, it's not my thing to copy somebody really. We all have influences and we do copy them to a certain extent, but it's certainly not my destiny or my plan to be a Stevie Vaughan clone. But I kind of like the canvas that he works with, and I like, this instrument. But what I hear a lot of guys do is over vibrate and over bend and have these crazy vibrato. Can't even do it, but sometimes it's okay, but sometimes it's just OTT, it's over the top. So be careful of your vibrato. Stevie Vaughan could be really sensitive, especially with that sort of Tin Pan Alley kind of style song. It would, he'd be really. It's got to be there. It's got to be, strong, but not over the top. That's my thing. And you can get over the top with these frets because they are very easy to bend and vibrate. When we come to the more kind of Hendrix, Clapton style Strat, you're going to see it's a different kettle of fish. So that's really my thoughts. Is it doesn't really matter. People get hung up about the pickups. The pickups for me, they're underwound. Stevie Vaughan used weak pickups. Just turn your volume down. You want to kill some of the power. Your technique is much more important. I think the main, after sort of chasing the Stevie Vaughan tone for 20 years, I've really come to the conclusion that it's really about the rosewood board. If you want to go. Because he played maple, Lenny is my favourite song, he played that on a maple neck. But if you want to go for that classic Stevie Vaughan sound, your rosewood, Brazilian rosewood board, big frets, really big frets, tuned to E flat, this is an E flat, and action not too low action, so you can really dig in, and really that's it. Pickups and the rest of this stuff, and it's not so important as your playing, your right hand technique and your left hand technique. That's much more important than the actual guitar itself. But so really, make sure, for me, what works for me is having a chunky neck so that I can feel my palm with the wood, and then I can really, it's easy to do the vibrato. And if you're doing voodoo chart, and then that gives you a platform to do some of the songs like Testify, where you can really hit the guitar hard because you've got the bigger strings, the lower frets. So having these big frets and big strings really helps you to dig in, especially with a song like Rude Mood. Skull button. And just having that song, because a lot of Stevie Vaughan's work with the upstroke. So, for example, talking about my strings, I'm using 12s in E flat, and that's actually quite easy to bend strings, even though they're 12, which sounds like a lot. Actually, when you're in E flat, it's quite easy. You can do those one finger bends, those sort of Albertine things, bend in a tone and a half. Quite easy, it's not hard. So normally I have this guitar tuned to E, and I have 11s, which is the same setup I have on this guitar, just because of the sort of work I do. But playing in E flat is very, very easy. It's not hard at all, because the combination of the high frets, the big jumbo frets, and your chunky strings, but you're in E flat, just makes everything nice and easy, But then you're really kind of thinking, well, this guitar can only play sort of Hendrix and Stevie Vaughan sort of repertoire on. So that's kind of like a thing you've got to decide. I mean, of course you can play other styles of music, but you're going to have to either transpose or tune up. So that's really a thing about having, especially like big strings, you can get that kind of nice chunky rhythm, that sort of that's really something, especially when I was doing that Testify example, or you could do maybe another song like that kind of style. Having the big strings, big frets in a lower tuning, you're going to get your sort of grooves, your Texas grooves, a lot more authentic sounding. So that's one thing I definitely recommend trying, even if you just try it for a few months and you want to learn some Stevie Vaughan repertoire. It's really worth trying to build one of these strats. Like I said again, I usually have this in standard tuning, but I just love that kind of big frets, and I can go to that kind of Texas place if I want. If not, I can just play my standard sort of style. Another really cool thing about putting a guitar like this together, it's actually really good for more sort of jazz blues style, because of the big strings, your big fat neck and the frets, this kind of style sounds really nice. So it's actually kind of nice for, it's quite a versatile instrument, don't think that you can only play Stevie Vaughan sort of style on this. So this is my, like I said, my kind of Texas Blues Strat. I don't think you need to get too hung up on like pickups and all that sort of stuff. Just go for a sound that works with your rig. The main elements here again are nice chunky neck, fat frets, high fat, jumbo frets, 6100 Dunlops these are. Nice bit of rosewood, big strings, and you're good to go really. That's basically it. Okay, so let's have a look at the other Strat. I'm a big Hendrix and Eric Clapton fan, and basically I really like Hendrix's later work, especially with Band of Gypsies, and he was playing a black Strat on with the maple neck on that album, that live album, which was fantastic. And also Eric Clapton as well. He had Blackie, which he used for years. So I've always just kind of loved that kind of, the black Strat, the white scratch plate, and the maple neck. This again is an Esp Navigator. So this is a really well-made instrument. Again, I'm not saying ESP are a great alternative to a Fender. It's just what works for me. Fender Custom Shop, and even the Fender sort of. I think they're called the reissue series. they make some amazing instruments. So you know, it's just it's whatever works for you. But this is basically a copy of I'd say you know, your vintage Fender Strat. The one thing I do like about this Strat is it's got a nice neck. Nice, again, not too chunky. I don't like really chunky necks, but it's certainly not thin, and it's just got that nice sort of size to it. The frets actually are low and vintage. Now I've got a theory that if you put in really big frets into a maple board, it can actually really change the resonance of the neck, and it sort of affects it. And also, but that's not to say that maybe one day I won't do that, but I just really like these vintage frets, the way it sounds. It's a little bit harder to play the guitar because you don't have all that metal that you have in these kind of Texas Stevie Vaughan style Strat. But it kind of just makes you play a little bit more delicately, and that, you know, sometimes that's no bad thing. So, especially, you know, if we're doing sort of Hey Joe. It's a very different instrument. Another example would be so you can play more delicately. You're kind of you're not digging in so much, and I think it's nice because like I said before, a lot of players that tend to just stay on that Stevie Vaughan Texas blues path, everything is they're smashing the guitar and digging, you know, and it's just like overkill. If they play another style, if you get a Stevie Vaughan sort of nut to play another style of music, it's, you know, there's no subtlety. It's just like everything's, you know, which is fine. You know, the intensity is what you need for that style, but if you're playing something more sensitive, then, you know, you need to change up your style a little bit. So I really find that this instrument makes you do that, you know. So for example, right, so let's talk about the string gauges on this one. This has got 11s on it, tuned to E, which may be a little bit too stiff for a lot of you guys, and that's okay because Hendrix actually used 10s in E flat, which are way too easy, all just sort of loose for me to play. I like a bit of stiffness there. But this is the trick. This is the trick, and you should try this, guys. I have low action on this guitar. You know, I have, you know, the frets are low, the frets are thin and low, and therefore I have low action, and then it's a little bit easier. Whereas on this kind of guitar here, you know, you have big frets and high action. This is totally different, and it really does work for a you know, more sort of what I call a more sensitive sort of style. And you know, try it out. You know, try 11s with low action, and it's actually not that hard. If you've got 11s with high action in E, it's going to be really difficult. So that's one thing you might want to look at. So with you know, Eric Clapton, obviously. Classic riffs, you know, you can play all that stuff a lot more effectively on this guitar more than this one, because again, your frame of mind changes. You've got to be more, you know, you're thinking in a different way, you know, you're approaching the music in a different way, and I think that's really important to have an instrument that is kind of a canvas that is, you know, it's like the difference between paper and canvas. If you're a painter, you know, you're going to obviously use different techniques to accomplish the goal. So that's kind of where we're at here on this maple neck Strat. Again, I've got the tuners, same sort of gold tuners. These are Mojo pickups. Now on this guitar here, I'm kind of really going for a 60s sort of vibe. So these kind of pickups you know, I don't know, if you go to mojopickups.co.uk, you can see Mark's 60s, I think it's called a CBS set or whatever. And I find that these are really good if you want to get that kind of Hendrix sort of tone. You know, obviously, you know, some I think they even do left-handed versions so that you can even get closer to his sound. But for me, again, I'm not so, you know, a lot of people go on about pickups, and you know, for me, as long as they work, you know, that's good enough. Some pickups sound better, but it depends on your amp. You know, it depends on your effects pedals and your amps and your guitar, the sound of your guitar. You know, everything's a chain. So just because you know, one guy's using or one woman's using a certain pickup doesn't mean to say it's going to work for you. You know, there's so many variables. But the Mojo pickups sort of seem to work for me in this guitar, which is, I'm going for this sort of late 60s kind of vibe. And they seem to get me, you know, pretty close to those sort of Hendrix tones. This is raw vintage again, saddles, raw vintage springs. I've got a Callahan block in there and a Callahan bridge plate, but you can use Goto. I think, you know, actually I'll go on record saying Goto sound better than Callahan. Okay, don't know why that is. You know, maybe Callahan's over-engineered, maybe the hardware is just too good, but it doesn't sound, you know, it doesn't sound vintage, you know, to me. So I'd go for a standard, you know, Goto Japanese quality is very, very good. So I have a green Cornell Dubilier capacitor in this one, and that just helps me if I just want to roll off that tone. You know, it gets quite a... So this guitar really shines on a track like Voodoo Child. I think I'm going to play this without wah-wah, with a fuzz pedal. You kind of see the maple neck sound, and the vintage thing is, for me, it's a small Hendrix sort of sounding. I'll just show you that. So it really reacts differently with fuzz, having the maple neck, thinner frets, more of a kind of 60s vibe from the pickups, and that's really where this guitar sort of shines. And it's also really great, it works really well on clean sort of ballads as well. Okay, so that's basically my two Strats here. Hope that's given you a little bit of inspiration of sort of how I go about putting my guitars together. Like I said, really I try to just kind of use one Strat. You know, if you can have one guitar that can do everything, that's fantastic. But ultimately I found that I really wanted one kind of vintage Strat for the more Hendrixy Clapton sort of thing. Maybe playing a little bit more delicate, you know, it's a different sort of approach. And then I wanted my kind of Texas blues where it's all out war, you know, you're just hitting the guitar hard, you're digging in, and it's another beast, you know. And I think really, you know, these two different worlds, the two different instruments, and you know, I don't think you need to, you know, some people get hung up on the strings and the pickups got to be the same, and you know, that was me, you know, like, you know, sort of 10 years ago that was me. I was in that kind of zone where it had to be the same Stevie Vaughan, or it had to be the same Hendrix. And I think ultimately you realise that you're chasing something that you're never going to get to, because really you just need to get an instrument, you know, and it's in your fingers, it's in your technique. But the guitar, if you get the basics right of the guitar, like having the big frets or the more vintage frets, if you get those basics right, then the rest is down to you. It's the instrument, just because the instrument's got certain pickups, it's not going to make you sound like Hendrix, it's not going to make you sound like Stevie Vaughan. But you know, why do you even want to sound like them? Because you are you and they are they. So it's, you know, use the inspiration of their kind of style of instrument, but try to make it your own. You know, try to get your own thing on the go. Learn some of their licks, you know, and then put it to use with these instruments. So I hope that's given you a bit of inspiration. And if you've got any questions, I mean, I can go into details in the comments. So if you want me to tell you the sort of radius of these instruments, or the string gauges or whatever, or the strength of the pickups, anything like that, ask me a question in the comments. And thanks for watching this video. We'll be back soon with a lot more.